Hey guys, welcome back to the channel once again. So today I have something a little special for you. I actually just finished doing the V-band clamp on the exhaust, and while the car's in the air I figure I'll start shooting the next video. But I am going to break down my brake assembly, hub, rotor, caliper, everything, and I'm going to reassemble it and just show you what exactly needs to be done in order to get the CTS-V Brembo setup on your car, or any brake setup for that matter, like the LS1 Camaro setup or the C5 brake setup. It's all pretty much the same steps up to a point where then you're just getting a different bracket depending on what caliper and rotor you're going to. So let's start taking the wheel off. I'm going to break everything down and then come back and I'll lay the parts out and show you exactly what I'm talking about. Here is everything broken down. I'm just going to go through all the parts I used and how exactly this is done. The steps I'm going to describe, it's all the same for any brake setup you put on here. So if you want to put the CTS-V brakes like I have, or if you want to put the C6 Z51 brakes, or regular just LS1 4-channel Camaro brakes, these are all the same steps you have to do before you get the parts of your brakes. Here are all the parts I pulled off. Now, that's my wheel spacer. And here is the part that a lot of people ask me about. Now, anybody who's familiar with a third gen knows that the rotor and the hub is one assembly. So when you pull the rotor off a third gen, this whole piece is the rotor. And then the rotor would be attached around this, kind of like that. And that would just be one piece on the third gen. So in order to get a modern brake setup on the car, you have to eliminate that third gen rotor. And the way you do that is you buy this piece. Now this is in fact a factory third gen rotor. The only difference is, well, there's no rotor. Now what this is it's a regular rotor, and then a shop just goes ahead and they put this on a lathe and they machine the rotor part off. So all you're left with is the center hub. And then on top of that, that gets machined, and then slightly longer studs are put in. So your rotor will slip right over this, and the thickness isn't going to affect how far down your lug nuts go. So that's the purpose of the longer stud. But it's pretty amazing because, like I said, this is a factory third gen rotor hub, and the new stuff, it's an absolute perfect fit. I mean, this rotor came off a C6 Z51 car, and it just fits right over the 80 stuff, which is pretty incredible. But that's how you get your rotor to fit. Now I'm going to link all this stuff down below, but everything I got was from BigBrakeUpgrade.com. These things, they come exactly like this. You buy them. You get the whole assembly with the studs already pressed in, the rotor shaved down, and I believe these cost $100, maybe $150 for the pair. Like I said, I'm going to put a link directly to these. So that's how you actually get your hub assembly and your rotor on the car. Now, as for having a bracket to mount it to, that's a different story. So basically you have to modify the spindle. Anybody who's, once again, familiar with a third gen, you know how the brakes work. You basically have the ears coming off the spindle, and that's your caliper bracket. The caliper rides on the cast iron ears on the spindle. So that stuff has to go if you're going to put the newer brakes on the car. So as you can see, it's as simple as just cutting the ears off. I used a Sawzall, I just chopped them right off. And when you're doing this, you just want to leave the 2 holes for where your backing plate used to sit. So here, here, and you can see down here is where the other one used to be. These 3 bolt holes are where the backing plate is bolted to the spindle. So just keep in mind when you're cutting these off, you want to leave these holes, because that's what's actually going to hold your bracket for your new caliper. Now, as for which caliper you're going to use, there's different kinds of brackets. This bracket, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be for a CTS-V brake setup. Like I said, I got this thing off LS1 Tech with the calipers from a guy, so I don't know if these are exactly the right caliper to use, because I actually have the right bracket to use for the caliper, because I actually have a problem where I just noticed pulling this off. I'm glad I pulled it off. The inside pad is sitting past the rotor and it's not making full contact, so actually the pad's too big for the rotor. So I think I'm going to go and change these out. The Z51 is a 13.7 inch, and at one point I had 17-inch wheels on the car, so I wanted to go with the smaller rotor, and a lot of people said you can use the Z51 rotor. And the CTS-V rotor is a 14-inch. So I think if I just get the 14-inch rotor and leave this bracket, I'll be all right, but I might have to change this out. But it's funny because I actually had a problem with the car ever since I did the brake swap. Was when I would be on the brakes hard, you would hear like a grinding noise. Only like you had to really stomp on them, like a short stop. And as you can see, that's the inside pad where it was just kind of hanging over the rotor. So, and that's where my noise is probably coming from, grinding against the inside of the rotor. So I would like to get the bigger rotor just to solve this problem. The noise will go away and the pads will be wearing the way they're supposed to. So I am glad I pulled this apart, so I was able to find that. That's your hub. Spindle, you have to cut the ears off, get rid of the old bracket, and then to actually mount this bracket, like I said, you have to drill out the existing backing plate holes, and that's what's going to hold your bracket. Now the bracket that you buy, they're all different. So if you want to go with the cheaper LS1 Camaro brakes, the bracket's going to be a different shape. They all of them bolt in the same spot, but they're just going to be like a different shape for the depending on the caliper you're using. But the bracket comes with the hardware, so you get the bolts you need, and you'll know what size the bolts are once you get the bracket. But you are going to have to drill and tap these out larger to fit this. Now, it's recommended you're going to want to do this on a drill press because you want these to go in like perfectly straight. That's how I did it. I drilled these myself. I tapped them. I don't know the exact size. Like I said, if you buy the bracket, you'll know the size because the hardware comes with it. But if you're not comfortable doing something like that, or if you just drive the car every day, I would recommend just go on eBay, pick up a couple of used spindles, and then you could chop the ears off yourself, and then if you want, just bring them to a machine shop with the hardware and tell them you need these holes tapped for those bolts, and then you actually have a separate set of spindles. You could take your time doing it. Even if you want to do it yourself, you'll be able to take your time, make sure you do it right, and get them tapped out correctly. And then as far as the grease seal, because as you can see, you got your grease seal back there. I just went and I took a grinding wheel and I just cut the rest of the backing plate off and just put the shield back on here for the grease seal, and then that's just held on with the one bolt down here, and that works fine. Keeps dust and debris away from the seal, and that's really all that's left of the backing plate. Now for the hoses, when I swapped these brakes maybe like 2 years ago, maybe even been more than that, but they didn't really have too many parts for this setup. Like they made the spin, the Big Brake Upgrade sold the hubs. There were write-ups online how to make the spindle, but for hoses I couldn't find a set of 3rd gen specific hoses, so for right now I just have this like zip tied around here so it doesn't move, it doesn't chafe. But I was just on their website the other day because I was actually looking to upgrade to the C6 Z06 brakes, And they do in fact now make a 3rd gen specific brake hose that locks into the factory spot, so I'm definitely going to be upgrading to those soon. But as far as the caliper goes, the threads for the caliper, for the bracket, are in the caliper. So when you're mounting this up, the bolt just passes through here, and then that screws into the caliper itself. And then I have these washers here that I just put in here just to shim the caliper out to make it perfectly centered on the rotor. And then on top of all that, these bolts here, I went and I put them red Loctite, torqued them down. Those aren't going anywhere. And I also go, just for the hell of it, and I put red Loctite on these guys. Call me paranoid, but I don't want these coming out. So I heat them up a little bit, they come right out, then you can leave the caliper. But as far as mounting the caliper, that's really it. You tap this, you cut off the ears, you tap the spindle, the bracket bolts right up, and then from there all you do is slip your replacement hub on, slip your rotor over it, and there's really nothing else to it. It's a pretty easy swap. The most modification he has to do is to that spindle. So there might even be people now who make them already modified. I think Big Brake Upgrade actually sells the spindles pre-modified. You could just buy them. That'd be a little pricey, but I mean it's easy enough where all you're doing is cutting the ears off and tapping the 2 holes. So if you have the money, I mean, by all means, just buy the spindles. It's probably the easiest and quickest way to go. But if you have some extra spindles lying around, it's probably cheaper just to modify them yourself. So I'm going to wrap this video up there. I'm going to switch over to the GoPro and just show you how all this stuff goes back together. But it's really simple. It's just like any other brake job. Once all that stuff is modified and the hub is actually installed, everything just slaps together just like brakes on any other car. Alright guys, so everything's back together. Went for a little road test. Car feels great. So I'm trying to put these videos out because when I did stuff like this to the car, you know, I was going through a lot of forums and stuff. You know, there was no really step-by-step on how to do this. So, and I would always like look online and hope that there's maybe a video on somebody who did it, because just seeing how everything goes together, it's a lot easier to understand exactly what you have to do to do something like this. I'm gonna link all the parts in the description, so the hubs, the CTS-V brackets, and if the site has the spindles, I'll link them as well. Also the brake hoses. Next video coming up, I might go ahead and pull the plastic dip on the wheels. I've had it on there for about 1.5 years. I kind of want to see how it's going to come off, mostly because the car is due for tires, which I'm probably going to do in the spring. So I figured if it's going to be sitting inside anyway, maybe I'll peel the dip off and have the rims powder coated. But when I have the tires dismounted, the dip's probably going to get all messed up and peeled off anyway, so I'm going to have to redo them. So I might just pull it off, just make a video, see how it comes out, see how the car looks with the silver wheels. But I'm probably going to end up going back to the black, whether it be re-dipping them or doing the powder coat. But it should be fun to see how that goes. That's going to do it for this video. As always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.